Hello.
And welcome to the Theology of
The Beatles.
with the hashtag Holy Hackets. So the Theology of series is intended to be a look at some popular media, so people's favourite songs, favourite films, favourite musicals, and to simply offer some reflections about what they might be able to teach us about our faith and life together.
So basically, we just sit on camera and talk about all of our favourite things and try to relate them to God somehow.
Because we're doing the Beatles today, looking at some of their songs, whenever we've talked about songs before on the Holy Hacket channel, we've always had some Nats facts to start us off with. And so today will be no different. We've got Nats Facts, the Beatles edition.
Basically, I'm the music maestro of the Holy Hacks.
Oh, of course.
So this is why we have Nats Facts. So I'm going to tell you some facts about the Beatles before we dive into a few of our favourite songs that we've managed to pull God links out of.
And I'll be sat here looking interested.
So first of all, we were almost sat here discussing the Quarrymen. Or it could have been Johnny and the Moondogs. Or even the Silver Beatles, before they called themselves the Beatles, which I think's a bit better than Johnny and the Moondogs.
Yeah, I mean, Johnny and the Moondogs says John Lennon's very much a change.
Yeah, I don't know if that would work, really. You've probably seen them all. I haven't seen a single one, actually. Have you seen any of these? The Beatles have made 5 movies. So we've got A Hard Day's Night, Help, Yellow Submarine, Magical Mystery Tour, and Let It Be.
I think I've seen Yellow Submarine.
Have
I
you?
think it's got the Blue Meanies in.
The what?
The Blue Meanies.
Was this before my time?
It was before my time as well. The Beatles were in the 60s and 70s. I wasn't born then. I'm only 3.5 years older than you.
Right. One other interesting fact that I found in my quick Google search of the Beatles facts. When they hit big, the Beatles were subject to massive taxes in the UK, which they sheltered by forming a public company to control their publishing rights.
Bit naughty.
It was really. It screams a bit tax evasion, doesn't it? So this company was bought out in 1969 and then put up for sale in 1984. Interestingly, this is when Michael Jackson famously outbid Paul McCartney for the publishing rights to most of the Beatles songs.
I love that, the Beatles not owning the Beatles songs because they tried to dodge tax.
Yeah.
There's a message in there somewhere,
Just a
isn't
bit,
there?
yeah. So apparently Michael Jackson paid £47.5 million
Wow.
for the catalogue of over 200 Beatles songs.
That's quite a lot of money.
Yeah, and then he needed the money then, so he merged with Sony and sold them again for 95 million.
Not a bad profit.
No, but interesting fact there, tax evasion.
Hence probably why they wrote the song about the tax man.
Oh, I like it. Which isn't one of the songs we're going to be doing today, I'm afraid.
So what is the first song that we're going to be doing?
So the first song, which we decided yesterday, our first song is Yesterday.
I bet they didn't get that. But shall we have a listen to some of that song?
Yesterday, all my troubles seem so far away. Now it looks as though they're here to stay. Oh, I believe in yesterday. Suddenly, I'm not half the man I used to be. There's a shadow hanging over me. Oh, yesterday came suddenly. Why she had to go, I don't know. She wouldn't say. I said something wrong. Now I long for yesterday.
A nice depressing start there.
Yeah, we're starting cheerful as we
beginning of the
mean to
video.
go on.
And that's facts before we go any further.
More Nats fact.
Yes.
We're in for a treat today.
This one surprised me. Now, Yesterday is apparently the most covered pop song of all time.
Wow.
Which really surprises me because it's a very miserable song. But there's over 3,000 versions recorded of this song.
So what is Yesterday about then? What can it tell us about our life and faith?
Well, Well, we thought it would be interesting to explore this one first because of the context that we kind of find ourselves doing the Theology of the Beatles in. So obviously, the global pandemic came upon us very quickly and we were thrust into the uncertainty of lockdown and all sorts of different restrictions. People are feeling a bit fearful, a bit anxious. Everything's a little bit miserable, and so this song kind of seemed appropriate.
Yeah, and it very much looks back to kind of that time, doesn't it, when things were easier, when things were less difficult, when things were hopeful, when there was opportunities. And I don't know about you, but I've heard many people say throughout the pandemic, oh, I can't wait for things to go back to normal. And thinking about, well, before the pandemic, before lockdown, things were so easy. Everything was perfect. The world was carrying on as it should. Nobody had any worries. And we know that's actually just simply not true. And I think there is a bit of the rose-tinted spectacles that come in this song.
Just slightly, isn't there? Yeah. But what do we do as Christian people when we're feeling that sense of anxiety, feeling really troubled by our fears, by the situation that we find ourselves in, which is just uncertain and scary?
And I think in this song we see something of where that goes. Obviously, this song is about as a kind of a sort of love song, if you can say that, that Paul McCartney's written for someone.
Well, yeah, the girls left him.
Yeah, he's still clearly feeling in love. And it kind of ends in that place of actually him reckoning, well, actually, I am so miserable, things are so difficult and so challenging because I'm all on my own, I've been abandoned. And there may be times when we might feel like that, particularly at the moment, that we've been left on our own, we've been abandoned. But actually, the hope that we have, rather than being Paul McCartney and simply having to mourn the loss of someone, actually we can recognise that God is with us through all of these things, that we don't have to worry at least about the fact that God is going to leave us, because that is not ever going to happen.
Yeah, and in the last verse there's a line, now I need a place to hide away. And actually just recognising that if we are feeling scared and if we're feeling anxious, we don't need to hide away, actually, because God knows our hearts and God knows what we need. God knows how many of us are feeling right now, and so God comes to us and wants to comfort us and embrace us and kind of take away that sense of anxiety and fear and replace it with a sense of peace.
There's that beautiful bit in the Psalms, isn't there, that says, where can I go to flee from your presence? I go down to the depths, you are there. I go up to the heights, you are there. I go to east or west, you are there. And recognising exactly that actually in the worst possible times, in the darkest of depths, we can know that God is there, but also in those highest of heights, we can know that God is there as well.
And there's also other people who are there, which is a nice little link.
A very good link.
Into our next song, which we just had to do, really, because I know how many of us have been missing our family and our friends. How many of us have only been going throughout this lockdown because of family and friends and the love and support of them, as well as God, of course.
Of course.
And a Nats fact to begin.
Nats facts.
This song was almost called Badfinger Boogie. Well, that was the working title for it anyway, when they were recording it, writing it, putting it together. Badfinger Boogie. And it was just called that because John Lennon had injured his finger. So let's listen to Badfinger Boogie, aka With a Little Help from My Friends, together.
What would you think if I sang out a tune? Would you stand up and walk out on me? Lend me your ears and I'll sing you a song, and I'll try not to sing out of key. Oh, I get by with a little help from my friend. I get high with a little help from my friend. Gonna try with a little help from my friend. What do I do when my
would you stand up and walk out on me? Oh.
No, I didn't want to open the door because it would have made too much of a noise for the camera. But I think this song starts off perfectly with really a description of what the church could and really should be. It starts off with obviously it's Ringo Starr singing this one, which immediately endears it to me because he is my favourite Beatle, mostly because he did the voice of Thomas the Tank Engine. But it starts off with him saying, "What would you do if I sang out of tune?" And thinking of if those times when we get things wrong, when we make mistakes, when we know we mess up in all kinds of different ways, what do our friends and families do? The best ones, the ones who are truly friends and family, won't get up and walk out on us, but will stay here with us, will be here through all things. And that really is a metaphor, a story of what the church should be. A place known for love and forgiveness, that when we get things wrong, it stays there faithful to us, to help us and to lift us back up.
Absolutely. And I think we have seen it so much throughout lockdown, certainly for us, as we've led worship online with our Holy Hackett community, actually seeing people from at least 5 different churches and beyond coming together to worship and to pray for one another and to support each other. And just seeing how we've all built one another up in the comments.
Definitely.
You know, even on days when we've been feeling low, when things have been rubbish for us, that sense of support and encouragement and building up that we've received from our little church community together has really been amazing.
It has. And those times, I think, where during morning prayer, for example, or during Sunday worship, when we see people having conversations in the comments, just saying simple things, oh, how was that appointment you had? Did you get everything sorted? Oh, I'm glad to see you back with us. I know you haven't been feeling well. I've been praying for you. Those times, if you ever see us just kind of talking to the camera and looking down and noticing comments and just smiling about nothing in particular, it's because we're seeing those conversations happen. That community of people who would never have met and probably will never meet in real life, having those conversations and showing genuine care and compassion for other people, it is beautiful, and it's what church and what community should be.
Definitely. And in our first song yesterday, which we talked about, not yesterday, but just a couple of minutes ago, we talked about that sense of fear and anxiety, and I suppose that ties in an awful lot with mental health. And throughout this pandemic of coronavirus, we've also seen almost a pandemic of mental health crisis, actually, and really recognising who throughout this last year has kept you going, whose love and support has been absolutely invaluable for you in your mental health. Because actually, church families, friends, our own families shouldn't just be there at those moments of deep joy and celebration in our lives, but also, you know, there to weep with us and cry with us and feel that pain alongside us when life is challenging and when life is difficult. And obviously in the midst of a pandemic where many of us know of people that have lost loved ones, or we've lost loved ones ourselves, we've really needed the help of friends and family to get through it.
Definitely. And we see as they're going through the Beatles doing some really good theology when it gets to the bridge. Do you need anybody? I need somebody to love. And reminding us that actually, we say it so often, we are made in the image of God. And the image of God is a God of relationship, a God who is by their very nature 3 in 1, Father, Son and Holy Spirit together in that relationship. And so being made in that image, we are then made to be in relationship with others as well. We need people to love in order to know what it means to be fully human. And I think we've seen that. I think we've seen that over the pandemic, seeing those challenging times because we have been on our own in so many different ways. And actually recognising that actually we have still been there for people very differently to how we might have done. But being with is such a crucial thing for church and for people to be, because we are made in the image of that God of love, that God of relationship.
Definitely. And I think as we look on, as we think about and reflect on our relationships with God, our relationships with Jesus, and as we read the Bible actually and see those expressions of faith and relationships with Jesus, I think we could safely say Jesus' ministry was one with love at the centre of it. If you like, Jesus came, shook things up and started a revolution of love.
Say you want a revolution, well, you know, we all want to change the world. me that it's evolution. Well, you know, we all want to change the world. But when you talk about destruction, don't you know that you can count me out? Don't you know it's gonna be alright? Alright. Alright. You say you got a real solution. Well, you know, we'd all love to see the plan. You ask me for a contribution. Well, you know, we all doing what we can. But if you want money for people with minds that hate, all I can tell you is, brother, you have to wait. You know it's gonna be alright. Alright. Alright.
Nats facts.
And we'll see what happens.
So a Nats facts for this one. It won't probably be a surprise. This was the first overtly political Beatles song.
The first.
It was. And it was John Lennon's response to the Vietnam War. And it's safe to say Paul McCartney hated it.
Excellent.
Yes, so there's your Nats fact.
So there was not a revolution of love within the Beatles.
No, but it's interesting, isn't it, that Paul wasn't terribly keen on it. And as I read the words, particularly the first, well, all the way through really, but the first verse, you say you want a revolution, well, you know, we all want to change the world. But when you talk about destruction, don't you know that you can count me out? And I think it really is a challenge, isn't it, to all of us as Christians, really. We talk about how Jesus came and how we read the Gospels and we see Jesus' ministry turned everything on its head, really, shook up society. And actually we see today total injustices. We see white supremacy, issues with racial justice, issues with homophobia, sexism. We see climate crisis, all of these different things. Do we really want to change the world? Do we really want to change all of these injustices and strive for that sense of social justice, equality and fairness? Because actually it's going to shake us up. It's going to call us out of our comfortable ways of living and demand something of us, actually. It's going to call on us to sacrifice something, to change the way we live in order for others to thrive and survive as well.
Absolutely, and I think that's what we see in so many of the stories in Scripture, isn't it? For example, the rich young man that comes to Jesus and says, I want to be part of what you're doing. And Jesus says, oh, well, I know you're following the commandments, you're loving others, you're doing all of this as you should. The one thing that's left for you to do is to sell all you have and follow me. And that's a step too far. He can't bring himself to say, yeah, okay, actually, I'm going to make myself uncomfortable for this. Actually, he's all right and happy loving people from his place of comfort and privilege. But he doesn't want to have the world shaken up in such a way that puts him in difficulty. And I say that knowing full well that probably the vast majority of the time, that is me.
Yeah.
I'm quite happy to be comfortable and safe and know that things are going fairly well for me. I will do what I can from that position to help others, but am I really ready to have my life completely shaken? And I don't know.
Yeah, and I think the word that speaks to me is costly, actually. Following Jesus is costly. You know, when you become a Christian, when you say, yeah, do you know what? I'm going to follow Jesus. It doesn't make life easy. It doesn't just flick a switch and give you this great life full of prosperity, money, nice houses, nice clothes, no problems and worries in the world. You know, it doesn't give you that, actually. That's when the real challenge starts, I think. When you say, I'm going to follow Jesus, you are suddenly thrust into this costly discipleship, or at least you should be thrust into that way of living.
And that cost will look different for everyone. It's not saying that all of us immediately have to give up everything that we own and do and all of that and go and live on the streets in order to try and change the world. but it's recognizing that we're not promised the easy and comfortable life through this. I mean, you read the scriptures and you see very little of an easy and comfortable life for the disciples.
Yeah.
And it is all challenge and all challenging people with even more power than you to try and make things different and to live differently.
And in our own Christian traditions, we see it as well. I hope there are Methodists watching this video.
I would assume
I
there
would
are.
hope so, considering we're Methodist ministers. But at the heart of the people called Methodists is social justice, a passion for social justice which came out of John Wesley, who himself actually recognised that costly discipleship when he decided to break Anglican rules, and off he went.
John Wesley's ministry and all of the early Methodists, their ministry is known for going to those places that were socially unacceptable, going and preaching to the miners as they were going in and out of work, which I always feel is a bit harsh. The last thing I would want to do after a full day down a mine is listen to a John Wesley sermon. But knowing that he would go to those places to take them the message of love and of grace and forgiveness and challenge, but also taking it to those places of high privilege, preaching in Oxford multiple times and saying, actually, you might think you're a Christian, but you're missing the point. Yeah. And acting for social justice, saying actually those messages from Jesus of going to visit the sick, visit those in prison, help the poor, are messages that are real. And if you're not doing those, you are not living a holy life. Recognising that challenge of social holiness, of being the people who are living to make a difference, is something that's so important to John Wesley, and then as a result throughout the history of the Methodist Church.
Absolutely, and then we've got the chorus of this brilliant track, because it is a favourite, isn't it? Don't you know it's gonna be all right?
And you know it's gonna be.
Here we go.
All right.
But what if we heard that actually as Jesus's voice when we're in the midst of the unknown, the uncertainty, following that call from God to costly discipleship? As Jesus in it with us, saying, you know what, it's going to be all right. I always think of that story, actually, of Peter in the boat and Jesus asking him to step out onto the water. And really, it's going to be all right. And Peter's obviously full of that kind of sense of, no, I can't do it. Unknown, really not comfortable doing this. But Jesus calling to him, it's going to be all right. When I call you out among the waters, it'll be all right.
Absolutely. And I think, again, we see that as we go through scriptures. And the book of Revelation is probably one you don't read that often. I'm going to go out on a hunch
I
and
don't
say.
Personally, if that makes you feel better.
but actually, so much of what that's about is about that ultimate victory, that God is greater. And saying that actually the world will be a real mess. Yeah. Things will go wrong and people will be hurt and painful and difficult and all of that. But actually, ultimately, it is going to come good. God is greater. There will be the new heaven, the new earth. That in the end, it will be all right.
Yeah. Yeah, and when we talk about social justice within the Methodist Church, I'm always reminded a few years ago when the Methodist Church adopted Micah, just one verse from Micah chapter 6, as its kind of statement also, almost for the year, wasn't it? Micah chapter 6, and just verse 8, what does the Lord require of you? To act justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly with your God.
They're beautiful words, aren't they?
Yeah, definitely. And I think if we take that as the centre of our godly living, I suppose, as our kind of living in faith as we try and go through life, we'll see how we are called to strive for justice and mercy, actually. And
that's what we see in that verse, isn't it? It doesn't say, and what does your God require of you? To go to church, to sit in a pew, to sing nice songs. But it's actually about living it out, about loving God in everything that you are and everything that you do. To walk in humility and recognise that this life isn't all about us and what we want. And to love justice. And so that what matters to God really is that all of his creation is loved. Yeah. And yet somehow we have this amazing God who forgives us for those times when we don't live godly ways, when we don't strive for justice and mercy. We have a God who actually offers us salvation by faith and not by works. Thank goodness. Thank God. Just literally. A bit, yeah. Which ties us quite nicely into our next song. It's almost like we've thought these links through, can you tell? It? Yeah. Our next song is going to be Can't Buy Me Love. I'll put the wallet away.
Can't buy me love, love, can't buy me love, I'll buy you makes you feel alright. I don't care too much for money. Money can't buy me love. I'll give you all I've got to give. You say you love me too. I may not have a lot to give. What I got, I'll give to you. I don't care too much for money. Money can't buy me love. If I need love, everybody tell me so. Can't buy me love. No, 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 no. Say you don't need no diamond ring, and I'll be satisfied. Tell me that you want the kind of thing the money just can't buy. I don't care too much for money. Money can't buy me love.
Nuts facts.
A nuts fact on this. Paul McCartney wrote this song. Despite rumours to the contrary, this song is not about a prostitute.
Well, that's a relief on a
Yeah.
Theology of series.
Absolutely. Instead, he actually claims it's a simple yet profound statement on what matters most in life. And that's, of course, love. Thankfully, God doesn't ask us to buy God's love by doing good works, which really is good for all of us, isn't it? Because we don't all
Definitely.
live Christ's way all the time.
I think we know that we
Yeah.
all make mistakes and we all get things wrong and we all fall short of God. And so many times, I think, particularly when you study history, you talk about all these kind of ancient religions. The one that immediately springs to mind is ancient Egypt, where when you died, your heart was weighed against a feather to see whether you'd been good enough to get into the
you
afterlife.
imagine?
It's a terrifying thought.
Isn't it?
It is. And thinking about that tension of if you've been good enough, if your heart is light enough, then you'll be let in. If you're not, then not a good place
Unlucky
to go.
mate. Yeah.
Exactly. But recognising that so many stories of religion that we hear go down those routes of actually, have you been good enough? Have you hit the mark? Have you ticked all the right boxes? And if you haven't, then you're off.
See you later.
And I think so often actually we present Christianity in that way, and we hear people talking about Christianity as a religion of, well, you've got all these rules and you've got to follow them and you've got to do the right thing and say the right thing and be in the right place at all the right times. And if you do all of that, then God will love you and then you will be accepted.
Yeah.
But it so isn't.
Imagine the shame and the guilt that would be attached to our core as we walk through life if we really believed that God didn't love us because we didn't give to that homeless person last week, or we bought a new car and really we should have given the money to charity. You know, imagine how we would feel if we walked through life just permanently feeling guilty for just living.
Absolutely. And that's not to say that we aren't called to try and be
Absolutely,
better,
yeah.
that we aren't called to try and improve ourselves, to try and follow Christ's way more. We all know that there are things in our life that we need to work on and we need to change. But ultimately, it's recognising that it is God who transforms us and not ourselves.
Absolutely.
And that first place to come to with God is a place that we are known and loved and accepted by Him exactly as we are. But then God's transforming love will bring us to more than that. It will make us the best version of ourselves that we can be. It's not about suddenly becoming a different person, about leaving behind all of our identity, but recognising that love for us is exactly where we are and will bring us to be the best person that we can be.
So the second verse of this song that we listened to says, I'll give you all I've got to give if you say you'll love me too. I may not have a lot to give, but what I've got, I'll give to you. And really, that kind of sums up for me what God wants from us. Literally just our hearts. It's okay if we haven't got anything else to give. Just give God our hearts, our lives, and our willingness to be transformed. And actually, that's enough for God. And then the final line, I don't care too much for money. Money can't buy me love. And I imagine that's probably what God thinks when we chuck a load of money into the collection pot on a Sunday and then don't think about God or anything to do with our faith for the rest of the week.
Definitely. I think as well this song goes beyond just talking about that moment of coming to God, of experiencing God's love. And it talks about actually our whole relationship throughout our lives. And from the beginning, I'll buy you a diamond ring, my friend, if it makes you feel all right. And thinking that actually we hear those verses of Jesus saying, ask and you will receive. And so often when we hear that, we think, well, if I ask for more money, am I going to get that? If I ask for a nicer car, am I going to
God,
get that?
can I get a new car next week, please?
But we know that that's not what it means. We know that prayer is not going to be answered in the way that you might hope. And recognizing that actually that thing of Jesus saying, ask and you will receive, is about saying, actually, get your heart in the right place, get your mind in the right place. Ask for God's kingdom, essentially, to come into the world. And that is what we will receive. Ask for transformation in our hearts. And that is what we will receive. It's not about getting all of the things that we want, because no matter how much you have, there's always something else. You can always have that a little bit more.
Absolutely.
But actually, when you encounter God, you realise that there is nothing more. That a relationship with Christ is the greatest thing.
Nothing gets better than that.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. So now we're going to listen to a song that was voted the best song of all time by a panel of songwriters in the year 2000.
Which is quite an award.
Yeah, for Mojo magazine. But interestingly, one of the panellists who was deciding what the greatest song of all time was actually Paul McCartney himself. So I kind of feel like we should take this statement of this being the best song ever with a pinch of salt. Because as much as I love the Beatles, I love Fleetwood Mac a bit more.
It turns out money can't buy you love, but it can buy you a place on the Mojo panel to make your song the best song ever.
So let's listen together.
There are places I'll remember all my life, though some have changed, some forever, not for better. Some have gone and some remain. All these places have their moments with lovers and friends. I still can recall. Some are dead and some are living. In my life, I love them all. But of all these friends and lovers, there is no one compares with you. And these memories lose their meaning when I think of love as something new. Though I know I'll never lose affection for people and things that went before. I know I'll often stop and think about them. My life, I love you more.
And that's facts.
Number 2.
Number 2. This is my favourite Beatles song.
And that is a fact. There's
That's
nothing,
a fact, yeah.
Nothing more to say.
That's a fact. This is Nat's favourite Beatles song, and that's a fact.
So,
Yes.
So what is your favourite song? Tell us about life and faith.
Honestly, I think it's that element of stories. I know I said it before in the Hamilton video, actually, that we are part of this massive story of faith, this story of Jesus Christ, that it will go on and on and on and on. And our faith stories are so important. I came to faith, well, as a teenager, about 15, 16, and I definitely got that sense of belonging to the church long before I got that sense of believing. But what really led me to thinking, yeah, do you know what? There must be more than this, and I want to know a bit more about God, was actually listening to someone's faith story. It was listening to someone tell me how God was with them in the highs of their life, but how God was also with them in the lows of their life. And hearing how God worked in their life, and their faith story then led to me being here today. So when I listen to this song about memories and stories, it really gets to me. I just love it. I love it.
And it's recognising, isn't it, that all of those people and things that have been in our lives, that what does it say, for people and things that went before, actually we can talk about them and we can say that actually we owe so many different people so much in our lives in all kinds of different ways. From when they've guided us in the right direction, from when they've shown us love, from when they've helped us and lifted up, from when they've encouraged us and celebrated with us. And sometimes even, well, also from those times when maybe they've shown us how we don't want to do something.
Absolutely.
How we maybe want to go in a different direction to the direction they've gone. And so that actually all of these things are so important to who we are and who we've become, that we should be able to name those and talk about those. And recognise those people who have been saints in our lives and encouraged us on that journey with God. And in telling other people about them, it may encourage them to think, well, actually, yeah, I've had people in my life that have shown me the right way to be, shown me these things. And what made them special?
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, one of the absolute highlights of ministry, and there are a few, but one of the real highlights for me is actually just being able to get to know people and to hear about their stories. Honestly, it's the best job in the world. I can just spend days on end going and sitting in someone's front room with a cup of tea and a biscuit and just listening to them talk all day.
But not at the moment.
Of course, this was post-COVID, but I can't wait to get back to that because I really, really have missed it through lockdown. I just absolutely love hearing people's stories of God at work and the people that surrounded them when they needed them, and just, yeah, it's just amazing.
And helping people to take that next step to see that those stories are God at work, even if they might not name it as that, even if they might not say it themselves, that actually in those people that were gathered around, that is God working through them. In those places where you were lifted up in a way that maybe you didn't expect or didn't understand, that is God at work. Yeah. And in helping people kind of tell their stories in different ways and recognise God in their stories, it will not only encourage them for the future and recognising, well, if God was with me back then, God will be with me there too. But also help them maybe speak to other people and say, well, this is where God's been for me, and I recognise your story. Sounds a little bit like this bit from mine when God was there. Maybe God was with you too. And encouraging people just to see that actually God is at work. And how can we encourage others to have that relationship with Christ that cannot be bought by money?
No, it can't. There is definitely power in sharing our stories and sharing our testimonies. And I never used to be very comfortable with that word testimony. And then you become a minister and everyone wants to hear your testimony, and you find yourself telling your story about 100 times in the space of a year. But actually recognising that there is real power in telling those stories because God can work through your words. About how God worked in your life, and that's what happened to me. God worked through that person who told me about their faith and about God in their life. So it's thanks to them that you have to put up with me here today.
And we're all very grateful.
Oh, isn't that lovely? That's really loving.
Is it?
And all I need is love.
Well, that's a relief.
Our final song, which we couldn't really not do. Really.
No, I mean, it kind of summarises everything that we've said so far and everything that we need to know, really, about what it means to live a life following Christ. Because all you need is love.
Done. Nothing you can sing that can't be sung. Nothing you can say, but you can learn how to play the game. It's easy. There's nothing you can make that can't be made. No one you can save that can't be saved. Nothing you can do, but you can learn how to be in time. It's easy. All you need is love. All you need is love. All you need is love. Love. Love is all you need.
Nats Facts.
Nats Facts.
A final Nats Facts for this video. I know. John Lennon's handwritten lyrics for this song sold for £1 million in the summer of 2005.
Money can't buy you love, but it can buy you the lyrics to All You Need Is Love. They do a lot of shooting themselves in the foot, the Beatles, don't they?
Just a little bit, yeah. How much do you love this song?
I kind of almost don't want to say it, but actually not a whole lot.
I wanted you to say it so you could embarrass yourself in front of several Beatles fans. Jez isn't a fan of this song. I think it's because at the end it goes on a while, doesn't it? And you get really fed up. But I absolutely love it because it's just the core of everything, isn't it? Love, love, love.
I love the message. I'm not going to try and pretend that I don't love that. And it is a really powerful song. And I think part of it is just actually the joy that comes with it. If you do it in short bursts, you almost can't help but sing along to it.
Yeah.
If you're in a room and someone starts going, All you need is love.
Everybody!
Everybody will join in and sing. It's almost a
Yes, they
natural
will.
thing to do. And it
100%.
shows how love can and should be spread.
My question is, that phrase, all you need is love, isn't it just a tiny little bit naive? Like, I don't want to knock the Beatles here, but you don't just need love, do you? You also need friends, family, God, a house, warmth, clothing, money sometimes, etc., etc.
But how many of those things can come from love? We have family, and that is love. We have friends, and that is love. We have God, and that is love. And actually, if everybody in the world loved others a little bit more than themselves, there wouldn't be that worry and that stress for people not having a place to live, not having food to eat, not having water to drink. And I agree, it sounds so naive.
Yeah.
It sounds like the kind of message that is utterly ridiculous, but actually isn't that the very core of the gospel, that things can be better, things can be different if we have love at the centre of all that we are and all that we do. And so Jesus' message is one that is, I think, in some ways really naive. That isn't going to happen in the world as it is at the moment. We know that. You do need so much more in order to live and survive. But if the world was as it should be, and if everybody followed this different way of living, love would be all you needed.
Just imagine how the world would look if everybody loved themselves, loved their neighbours, and loved God. Really, which is the crux of the Christian faith, isn't it?
I'm sure someone once said that love God and love your neighbour as yourself was the most important
Possibly,
commandment.
yeah.
Can't remember who.
So I suppose let's have Jesus' message of love, Jesus' revolution of love, as our centrepiece, as our core message as we go on through the rest of the week.
Definitely. So there is your challenge in all that is to come, to have love at the centre, because all you need is love.
That was the theology of the Beatles, with a few of our favourite Beatles songs, of course.
There's so much more that we could have said. There are so many Beatles songs that have got so many brilliant stories in that you can share and think about. So maybe that's something you could go away and do. Think of your favourite Beatles song and think about maybe what God might be telling you through the gospel according to the Beatles.
Why not? So we will see you soon for our next theology of ... because we're not unveiling what it is yet. Because we don't know.
But if there is something that you want to see us do a theology of, as long as it isn't some 20-season thing like the Theology of The Simpsons, because we will be doing that forever, then tell us in the comments, let us know what you want to see a theology of, because we're enjoying this.
Absolutely. So yeah, see you again.
Bye.